For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Manouk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, feeling footloose and fancy-free on this Saturday morning as the two of us will spend the next couple of hours with all of you, our good friends, talking about the Winnipeg Jets, everything to do with what has been an actually relatively busy week for the Jets in terms of getting some work done. I don't know about you, Dave. The air seems lighter. It seems like I'm just more energetic. There's something brighter about the show on this Saturday morning, and I just can't quite put my finger onto it as to what that is. It must be that we're wearing the same shirt that we've managed to sort of color coordinate for the show. That's got to be it. I can't figure out for the life of me what else it could possibly be.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, Drew. I mean, it could be the fact that we are absent the almost birthday boy. Big early happy birthday, Des, who's celebrating his birthday on Monday, and he's getting things started out at the lake, we assume, today. So happy early birthday to Ezzy.
We don't really care where he is. We just know he's not here. That's basically what it boils down to. But yes,
he's in parts unknown.
Yeah, we'll wish him a happy birthday, and that'll be the last we speak of him on this morning's program. We got a great show in store for you. Coming up in the bottom of hour number one, Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press is going to join us. Jeff is always honest. He's always truthful. He's always well-spoken. We look forward to welcoming Jeff.
Unlike us,
we're just a bunch of rubes who somehow managed to luck into this operation that we're doing. So Jeff will join us in the bottom of the hour, and then coming up in hour number two, Dave and I had the opportunity yesterday afternoon to sit down, virtually of course, with Vlad Namestnikov, who of course signed a 2-year contract with the Winnipeg Jets on free agency day. So we look forward to have we'll air that conversation. It was a really great conversation between us and Vlad Namestnikov, talk about his thoughts about re-signing with the Jets, what he has in store for next year, and what he thinks about the team moving forward. So you can look forward to that coming up in about 90 minutes time on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We start, of course, though, with the news of the week regarding the Winnipeg Jets, and that was the team, as we both sort of expected, Dave, the team avoiding salary arbitration with both Gabe Vilardi and Morgan Barron, getting both of those young players under contract for the next couple of years. Gabe Vilardi, a 2-year deal, $3.4 million per season, a very reasonable salary cap hit of $3.4 million a year. That's for the next 2 seasons for Vilardi, recently acquired from the LA Kings, and Morgan Barron, who of course somebody I saw on Twitter said his contract should have ended in a 7 and a 5, indicative of the number of stitches he got in his face for the Winnipeg Jets, or as a member of the Winnipeg Jets during the playoff series. He gets a 2-year, $1.4 million deal with the Jets, avoiding salary arbitration as well. So you can see the list of things that the Jets need to take care of before the offseason can truly begin is quickly dwindling. Of course, that puts aside anything to do with a trade, be it the defense, Scheifele, Hellebuyck. But Dave, I guess your first thoughts on the contracts for Vilardi and the contract for Barron.
Yeah, I mean, I think they both came in exactly where we thought they would, which is, I mean, that's what we said. We said on this show last week, right, Drew? We expected it to be in that 3.4 to 3.6 range, and it came obviously in between that. So, I mean, I think the contracts are fair. I think I didn't think there was any question. I already put that comment up, Drew.
Sorry,
but, and that one also. Drew,
okay, sorry,
attention. Holy moly. Drew's not paying attention,
I was in my soliloquy. I wasn't focused.
You can use Craig and Andrews. I haven't posted those if you'd like to post those, Drew. Anywho, the point I was making before Drew rudely interrupted me with repeat comments.
Yeah, the comments for the podcast people are just everyone saying good morning because we're a nice, friendly show. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Yes, exactly. Good morning to everyone here who's listening to us on this beautiful Saturday here in Winnipeg and wherever you are joining us, including San Diego for Dallas. Now, as I was saying, in terms of these contracts, I mean, I didn't think it was going to be any other way, really. I mean, I wrote about it in the papers this morning. How many contracts have the Jets signed in terms of a long-term deal for a player that's, really, it's an RFA?
Yeah.
3. Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, Kyle Connor.
3
and those are all
sure things.
Sure things. And also, I mean, the Mark Scheifele one was a bit of a not certainty, but I mean, again, it was in retrospect, it's a hell of a good contract. Mm-hmm. But the point is, it's not the Jets' MO. It's not the way the Jets operate. Now you can say, well, you can always change. People can get worried that, this could turn into a Pierre-Luc Dubois situation, but it made no sense. It made no sense why, let's talk about Gabe Vilardi specifically, why Gabe Vilardi is going to sign with an organization long-term. Sure, he get years, but I mean, first of all, he's betting on himself, and there's an inherent risk, of course, if you have injuries or anything like that. But he's choosing to bet on himself, and more importantly, he doesn't know the organization. He's heard probably a lot of rumblings that have been, spoken about in the media about the uncertainty in the environment, and of course, that's what's happening with Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele. So I would imagine that Gabe Vilardi said, "Okay, well, let's do 2 years." Remember, I know I'm seeing it out there for some reason. People think he'll only have a 1 year to UFA after that. It's 2 years. I know, but I read an article today where it said it would walk him to only be 1 year away from being a UFA. I'm like, well, it's not accurate. So, it's not factual, not based in fact. The Jets would have 2 more years of team control. Yeah. And so the fact is that really you're going to know after 2 years if you want to consummate a long-term relationship. They're not going to be like, okay, we'll sign a 1 year deal with Gabe Vilardi after 2 years time. They're going to know, and they're going to be able to say, we want to commit to you long-term. Or if they don't, then maybe they do sign that 1 year deal and they look to deal them.
Well, and the truth is you can sign, if let's say after this year, he continues to, proceed on the upward trajectory that the team hopes that he's going on, and that he's certainly indicated as such last year with his play in Los Angeles. Well, there's no reason why you can sign him to a contract extension a year before his contract is up. So It's not and I understand the jitteriness. I do, because you've seen it play itself out here in Winnipeg multiple different times where guys who sign a short-term bridge and then, quickly depart the city. We saw it with Dubois. That's what led to Vilardi being here. You saw it to some extent with Jacob Trouba. I mean, that, at a point in time, a 2 year contract can be an indicator that it's going to be a quick departure for that player from Winnipeg. But that's not necessarily the case here. I don't think that you can press that panic button because he signed this 2 year deal. Again, this is what you would expect. There's no reason for either side to think that there's a longer term deal potentially here. There's no reason for Gabe Vilardi to want to sign a 7 year deal with an organization he doesn't know of, because he keeps thinking he's going to keep improving. And the Jets aren't going to want to sign him to a 7 year deal because they don't know exactly where he's going as a player just yet. So,
and
from both
just
sides,
just a quick interjection on that idea of the 2 years. Remember, the salary cap is supposed to go up.
Sure.
So if he continues to progress, and if he becomes a 30 to 40 goal scorer and however many assists, and he's consistently producing, well, his number, if the salary cap goes up by, $5, $6, $7 million, can become a much bigger number than when it's at $82 million. So I just think from Gabe Vilardi's perspective, it makes a lot of sense. From the Winnipeg Jets perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Your team is somewhat in flux, but you've got a guy who you're going to try and grow with this group and try and compete with this group. And if you look at the overall depth of this team, and it's one of the things we talked about yesterday with Vlad Namestnikov, the team is a deeper team. Now, you've lost Blake Wheeler, and again, we thought Blake Wheeler's usage was not Blake Wheeler's ability. Well, I mean, we thought his ability to come down a little bit, but, his usage should have reflected that. We thought, that's our opinion. We're not the coaches. We just are pundits. And you've lost Pierre-Luc Dubois. So you have lost some talent. But I mean, again, defensively, I think you're not necessarily, you're going to be a better team. And that's what the Jets needed to be, was a better team. You can't outscore your problems. And that's what the Jets oftentimes tried to do. And you do. I wonder what kind of impact this would have on Mark Scheifele's game. If he's playing with more defensively responsible teammates, does that make him a little bit more defensively responsible? Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Pierre-Luc Dubois might be the ultimate nightmare in terms of defensive. You may as well just leave those guys above the red line at that point. So we'll see what happens this upcoming year in that regard and the terms of the depth. But again, getting back to this Velarde contract, it absolutely made sense. And it was, to me, it was a no-brainer. It didn't need to make arbitration. I mean, you see what you hear so many horror stories. And I know Andrew Kopp obviously didn't appreciate going through arbitration with the Jets, and that left a little bit of a bad taste in his mouth. And it sounds like every player, I mean, whether it's former players like Jeff O'Neill talking about, the Samsonov one in Toronto, where they went to arbitration, I think 2 days ago.
Yeah.
It's not a good look. So they avoid that with Morgan Barron, who we think, again, another guy who signs a short-term deal, but it makes sense because you want to see what he's going to be able to do consistently at the NHL level. You think you can find a role for him. And again, perhaps create, if he's on the fourth line because of this added depth. I mean, a line of Barron, Gustafsson, and Kupari, for example, maybe there's something there. Maybe you create a fourth line with a little defensively responsible, can occasionally put the puck in the net. I saw one of those, I don't remember, was it Jay Fresh who put the most at 5-on-5, creating the most chances behind the net. And David Gustafsson was like top 10 in the NHL. I know people are going to pish paw that because he didn't score any goals, but he's also passing to black holes like Saku Menalainen and guys who just couldn't finish. So while he himself didn't shoot a ton, I do wonder what, he will look like if he does get to that center role where he's comfortable playing with those guys and creating a bit of an identity with Morgan Barron. Again, a guy who's going to be looking to grow his game. And that kind of contract makes a lot of sense to me as well, given the fact that, he's a young-ish guy. And everybody, as we said to Vlad Nemestikov, Drew, yesterday, everybody's young when we're talking about them, but he's a younger guy in the NHL. And I think, he's in a prove me sort of, here's your opportunity now. You've got 2 years to really establish yourself, kind of like what Mason Appleton tried to do, and give yourself an opportunity to establish yourself as an everyday NHLer.
Yeah, that's really the story, I think, of the Jets offseason is the focus on defensive responsibility, at least certainly I would say in the bottom of the lineup. Not even the bottom of the lineup. Everywhere but Scheifele, Connor, and Ehlers, let's say. Those are the guys, Scheifele and Connor. I won't even include Ehlers necessarily because Scheifele and Connor are the guys who, are still offense first and foremost. But the rest of the lineup has certainly, you can see the emphasis that the organization has put on defensive responsibility in trying to build from that end out. And that'll be sort of a fascinating storyline to watch as the season unfolds. And we're going to talk about it later on in today's show, but there's a wide disparity, particularly in the analytics community, about how the Jets are going to project for next season. And it's something that I think is a really interesting conversation. We'll probably touch on it more in the 10 o'clock hour, but you can see that, some of the, depending on which model you subscribe to in analytics, some say the Jets are one of the, are going to be an impressive team. Others say that the Jets are going to be more of a bottom feeding team. So there is a huge gulf, a huge gap in the projections for the Winnipeg Jets next season. We'll dig into that a little bit more throughout the course of today's program. But, going back to the contracts themselves, they're just logical on both sides of things. I mean, Velarde thinks he's got more to prove. Morgan Barron certainly thinks that he's got more to prove, especially offensively, because we know that Morgan Barron is, certainly one of the Jets, is one of the better penalty killers. And so does he have more of that untapped finishing? That would be the question, I think, for Morgan Barron moving forward is there more of an offensive upside to his game, playing with maybe more offensively inclined players, or just having a Jets team that is more that has better depth and is more well-rounded than some of the, as you referred to it, sort of the black holes on offense that we saw oftentimes last year. Does that, by virtue of playing with some better offensive players, but at the same time defensively responsible, does that change the fortunes for some of these guys and maybe tap into some more of that offensive potential? That's what Morgan Barron is certainly banking on over the next couple of years. I mean, $1.4 million a year is never going to hurt anybody. It's a good deal. You're not going to blink an eye at that. But Morgan Barron is probably saying, look, I think I'm going to be playing with better players next year. Not that he's going to be playing, with Scheifele and Connor. He's not going to be playing at that level in the lineup, but he's going to be playing with guys who have a little bit more offensive talent is what he would hope. And as a result, he's going to say, hey, maybe some of those chances, maybe some of those opportunities, where he creates a lot of, he's known, again, I'm reading off of the Jay Fresh player cards. He's a great follow on Twitter if you don't follow him. Jay Fresh Hockey really breaks it down very in an easy to consume manner. He says Morgan Barron is a two-way winger and penalty killer who creates a lot of rebound chances in tight, but struggles to finish them. So maybe does that struggles to finish them part, does that change play?
He's getting skates to the face, Drew. What do you want from the guy?
It is hard to finish. It is hard to put the puck in the net when you're worried about getting your eye off of a skate blade. That's certainly the case, as we all remember from the playoffs. But it'll be interesting. I mean, you can see these contracts and, the upside that both players are banking on. And frankly, if both those players begin to achieve that upside a year from now or 2 years from now, whenever the Jets decide to go back to the bargaining table in an effort to negotiate a contract extension with those players, the Jets will be happy to pay for that increased production, because that's what they want to see out of these guys. They're both still young. They're both still 24 years old. The Jets would gladly pay from, to see them be, middle six or top six players from the times that they're 25 to they're 29 or 30 or whatever it might be, hopefully before that age curve begins to rear its ugly head, Dave.
No, I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I'm reading the comment now from Alan Hayes, who says, if the new depth additions from the PLD trade playing the defensive system consistently as a unit, they may surprise a lot of people with respect to this team, I think is what Alan was trying to say. Yeah. And I think he's not wrong. I think that there's a part of that. And that's why I think, and we'll get into that, Drew, as you alluded to in the next hour through a conversation as he was having, pitting Jay Fresh against Dom, the idea of one model saying they're going to be the second best team in the NHL and the other one saying they'll be the 27th best team in the NHL. And of course,
it's a wide gap right there.
Well, and it's funny because I had someone say to me, on Twitter, he's like, these pundits, I go, yeah, how many pundits actually go back and say, this is what I got right and this is what I got wrong? So I said, you always have to take these projections with a big old grain of salt, especially in the middle of summer when there are 1,000,001 factors still to take into account. But, getting back to Alan's comment, that idea of a more defensively responsible Jets team. And that's one that folks have, look, defensive hockey isn't the best. It isn't the prettiest to watch sometimes, but ultimately it could be, again, if you play a puck possession game and you're not, simplistic with what you're doing, if you're following a system, and these systems aren't complicated. I mean, most teams, it's not like this team's like, okay, we're running 17 different systems. You're running.
We are playing with 7 forwards. That's our system.
But the point I'm making is that, you do look at the Iafallos and the Rasmus Kupari and most specifically Gabe Vilardi, who brings a hell of a lot more defensive responsibility than Pierre-Luc Dubois ever did. And I think that for me is what's going to be impactful. We'll see what a full season of Vlad Nemestikov can do. Cole Perfetti. And I know that people think he can't stay healthy. And obviously he has had his health issues and that will be the biggest factor. But when you heard Kevin Cheveldayoff, who's the general manager of this team, talk about the Jets club, what did he talk about? He talked about the big expectations on Cole Perfetti's shoulders and what kind of step. Yeah, exactly. And exactly. And so will he be able to, step up and assume that mantle? And that's, there is a responsibility and there's going to be an opportunity. And that's the big word we always use, the big O word that we use, that opportunity word. And it's going to be across the board. That's the one we focus on, Drew, on this show, not on another one. But the point is that
you knew where my brain went.
I could see it instantly. I watched your.
As soon as you said it, I'm like, well, there goes my brain right into the gutter as per you.
You know what? Come on. This is a family show. We had Bailey, the intern. Thankfully, Bailey jumped off so she could go explore Toronto. She's not listening to your dirty mind. But the point I'm trying to make is that there is a opportunity for battles in training camp. And that's what you want to see. And you want to see that. You want to see, to be honest, you want to see Ville Heinola. And I know people are going to poo-poo that, but you want to see Declan Chisholm. You want to see these young guys come in. You don't need to see Kyle Capobianco. Kyle Capobianco was a good vet. He did what the organization asked him. He was ready when they needed him, and he played fine when he was thrown into the lineup. I'm not maligning Capobianco. I'm just saying that there are a lot of Capobiancos that Kyle Capobiancos.
You just like saying his name over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think that it's and look, Jay Miller's asking who's the 2C again. It's a good question.
It's a very good question because I
It's a-
see a lot of it. I see a lot of people saying it's Nemesnikov, and it might be, but
We asked him, Drew. We asked him yesterday, and I don't want to be a spoiler, but we did ask him if he has a preference. He did, and for the record, spoiler alert, he doesn't.
But I think that's a big factor. I think that is sort of being not necessarily overlooked, but I mean, I expect the Jets are going to probably try and give it to Velarde. I see all these projections where he's not necessarily playing that role, but I think the Jets would love to see him grow into that slot and be the second line center for this team, because otherwise, with all due respect to Vlad Nemesnikov, and he was a great guest and we appreciate him joining us, and you'll hear that interview coming up in about 70 minutes time here on the show. Vlad Nemesnikov hasn't been that high in a team's lineup in a lot of years now. So to expect him to come in and play that role for the Jets is asking a whole heck of a lot from him. Now, some people might say, well, it's going to be a group effort, and it certainly is. But when you're, at some point in time, it does come down to matchups, and it comes down to, the talent of the opposition. And, with all due respect to Nemesnikov, I don't know that he's necessarily well suited for going up against the Leon Draisaitl's, if you want to call. Draisaitl in every world is a first line center, but on Edmonton he might be a second line center, or whatever it might be. So that's asking a whole heck of a lot from a player who is a very intelligent player, a very well-regarded veteran in this league, but that's playing in a higher role, in a higher level than he's accustomed to. Now, do the Jets have another option? Well, they don't really. Velarde, if he can grow into that role, that would be ideal for the team, and I think that would be their ultimate wish. But that involves growing into that role. Is the operative word there? Is developing into that role, and then never mind with Scheifele and Connor. If they're still going to be, they can put the puck in the net. Nobody disputes that. But if at the same time they're going to be, the opposition's going to put the puck more in the net when they're on the ice, if they're going to lose that head-to-head battle because of their defensive shortcomings, well, that's also not, that's not great. That's not something that is easy to overcome for the Winnipeg Jets. So I don't subscribe to those who are, and it's not coming from Winnipeg by and large, but those who are really down on the Jets. I think that they are in the Central Division, which is the division obviously that they play in and they play the majority of their games in. I think the Jets are going to be fighting tooth and nail for a playoff spot. I don't believe that they're going to be, as one of the projections was, the second best team in the NHL. But I also don't think that they're going to be a bottom 5 team in the NHL. I think the depth is better, and they're going to be a team that's going to be fighting all season long to be a playoff team. I don't think it's going to be, I think they're one of the many teams that are in the middle of the pack. Is that good enough? Is that where you want them to be? Well, that's sort of almost a separate situation and a separate topic of conversation for another day and time. But that's where I see this team right now, as we're getting closer to the sort of end of what I would describe the transactions for the summer.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. And again, there's so many question marks, right? And that's the interesting thing. And that's why I think projections are just a waste of time at this point of the season, because really, until you know how the team is going to be composed, like, how do you make a projection? If Connor Hellebuyck isn't the number one goaltender, doesn't that change your projections? If Mark Scheifele isn't your number one center with this 42 goals, and again, the presumption would be you're getting something back. It's gonna be player for player, but again, you have to figure that out. Like, so I just look at it and I laugh, because I'm like, okay, well, what is this really worth the paper it's written on? Because there's so much uncertainty. And look, Gabe Velarde. You're right, Drew. I've seen so many people. He's going to be the winger alongside Mark Scheifele. Well, that improves Mark Scheifele defensively, or at least that line 100%. But aren't you looking at Gabe Velarde? And Gabe Velarde himself talked about it. When he came into the league, he was a center. And he didn't earn the trust of the Kings coaching staff. In fact, he earned their ire more often than not, and he went to the wing. And of course, they obviously have a lot of center depth with Kopitar and Danault and so from that perspective,
Dubois now,
but now Dubois, but yes, but the point is that there is, and
They
Byfield.
didn't need him up the middle they didn't need to hit for him to succeed up the middle as desperately as the Jets sort of do need him to succeed up the middle. That's
right.
That's
well, and
the point.
again, but it comes back to that idea. Like, here's an opportunity for Gabe Vilardi to be like, okay, I can be a position player that this team desperately needs. It's going to put me in a position to have a ton of success. If I, look, if Gabe Vilardi's playing aside Nikolai Ehlers, Kyle Connor, or Cole Perfetti, that's a lot of talent on that line, regardless of who his wingers are. But I think that will make him a, better player. There's a lot of, there's a lot to like from it. So look, the sample size of him playing center in LA obviously wasn't significant, but this organization, I think in a lot of ways makes that mistake in terms of you have guys who play a certain position their entire career. And a lot of organizations do it where they don't trust the player. And again, we saw that and you have to earn the trust. You don't just get the position,
right.
But like I said, it sounds like Gabe Vilardi learned and changed his way of thinking and earned the trust in LA to play some more center by the time, within last year. And obviously, like I said, that may be an opportunity. I just think if you look at the Jets, traditionally you have guys who play center in the American Hockey League, Jack Roslovic, and then they switch him over to the wing. They have a guy in Cole Perfetti who can play center. They switch him to the wing. Now I understand why you do Cole Perfetti, because maybe of a size, mismatch in the NHL. But again, Perfetti's a smart player. I do wonder if it can be, again, that I think it becomes a battle, a training camp battle, Drew, where, Rick Bowness is going to say, sure, let's see Gabe Vilardi at center for 2 of these preseason games. These preseason games actually may have a lot of significance, even though we usually make fun of them and we do not do post-game shows for the pre-games. The reality is there could be it's a lot more significant, I think, even though you're playing, generally speaking, against the other team's AHL club and prospects, and you might be playing your NHL guys. I think it's going to give an opportunity for Perfetti and Vilardi to try and establish themselves. I mean, that's the thing. You've always got Nemestikov as a safety valve backup, but there you've got really I think your point is well made. I think you keep Nemestikov as in your back pocket. He's kind of your ace in the hole ultimately if you need him, but really you want to see Vilardi or Perfetti step up and take that, and then you can at least, like I said, have a little bit of center depth.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating training camp battle, but the point for the Winnipeg Jets, the good news for the Winnipeg Jets is that they have Gabe Vilardi under contract for the next couple of years. They have Morgan Barron under contract for the next couple of years. Still to be determined under the contract status, Logan Stanley, Declan Chisholm, Rasmus Kupari. Wouldn't expect any of those to be contentious, but they'll probably get figured out over the coming weeks or so as the Jets quickly move out of the summer until August, where things really quiet down in the NHL front. When we come back, Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press joins us to talk more about the Winnipeg Jets. And at the bottom of hour number 2, as we discussed, our interview with Vlad Namestnikov. Stay tuned. It's a Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on all of our social media platforms. We're back Saturday morning. Welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're waiting for Jeff Hamilton to join us momentarily, but I had to share this photo, Dave M., because I needed it on the record that this is what happened last Saturday afternoon. I was playing basketball in my driveway with my son, Sam, and then I looked across the street, and who was walking down the street but our good friend from The Athletic, Murat Atesh. And
wait, is Murat with the Athletic? Is he with The Athletic? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, he's got the Athletic t-shirts. He's got the Athletic cap. I'm not entirely certain if he had a big A shaved into the side of his beard or not, but I don't believe he did. But nonetheless, not only did I wave at Murat, but I went over. We had a whole stop and chat, the arm around each other for the photo. So I needed to put this on the record. I tweeted it earlier in the week when it happened, but I wanted
Wouldn't
the
that
audience
officially be on the record then?
Well, yeah, I guess it could be, but I wanted the audience on the show to see it, that I not only did I wave, but we hugged and chatted and everything else. So any beef that existed.
Hold on. We got the winning comment from Matthew Thompson. Old hippie meets new hippie.
I was proudly sporting the tie-dye and everything else, but nonetheless, there you go. Me and Murat, arms around each other together forever. I wanted to share that.
Hold on, we got another winner from our good friend Spency. Well, let me focus on it. This photo is filled with, in quotes, athletic, while also being filled with completely unathletic, ironically.
Thank you. You're right.
Very well done.
If you've ever seen me play basketball, you would really
He's a checker, folks.
You would be cringing at my basketball skills. My son, who's 5, is a much better basketball player. I can't hit the broadside of a barn from a foot away, unfortunately, when it comes to basketball. But nonetheless, there it is. There's the photo of me and Murat from last week.
More importantly, how can you tell it's the second last show of the season when our content is now a picture of you and Murat, and we're supposed to provide some sort of analysis here?
There's no analysis you need to provide. It's just
I want to believe me. I could spend 10 minutes talking about that shirt.
The shirt is a great shirt. I'm not going to deal with anything about the shirt. But anyways, I wanted to send you that. Not sure what happened to Jeff Hamilton. I'm going to send him a text to see if he's ready to join us. So I'm just going to remind him.
We don't appreciate tardiness on the. We don't appreciate tardiness unless it's Ezzy and I on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So come on, Jeff.
Exactly right.
The interview started at 9:30. We're cutting you off. We're not here.
Nonetheless, yes, I do look remarkably small in that photo as well. I'm not sure.
And Murat's not that tall, so I'm not entirely certain if he was standing on a curb and you were down below or what. But definitely a little unusual.
I think that was it. Is that I think he was on the curb and I was a little bit lower, but I'm certainly look. I'm not tall. I've come to grips with the fact that I'm not going to be tall, and my hairline is clearly absent. But nonetheless, I don't think I'm quite as short as it indicates. I look like a munchkin in that photo, but nonetheless, it was great to see Murat.
Hold on, Takedown Legend also has a good one. Wolfman hugs man with alopecia.
Okay, well, as long as I'm being the butt of the joke for everybody, that's the important part.
By the way, Drew, before, I don't know if you saw the comment, but Nicole said she was happy to have met you, and she was at Rumors, and she was very thankful to Rumors. So shout out to Nicole. I think she said it was it her daughter's?
It was her daughter's wedding social.
Wedding social Saturday. Yesterday. Last Saturday at Rumors. There you got the comment. So,
yes, it was wonderful to meet Nicole and her husband and celebrate with everybody that was there for the great wedding social last Saturday. So yes,
there we go.
That was terrific. So a lot of fun, a lot of good things happening so far on this Saturday morning here on the program. Everyone's calling me a munchkin now. I'm not sure if how I feel about that, people, but that's okay.
That's okay, Drew. Munchkins
I have a
matter.
thick skin. Yeah, I have a thick skin indeed. So let's move on to talking about the gulf in the analytics as we wait Jeff Hamilton approaching this
as he was creating a divide in the analytics community with his tweets.
Well, it's much to my chagrin to give Ezzy credit. I don't like doing that, but I thought he asked a very reasonable question. Right. So on Twitter, Jay Fresh Hockey put out his projections based on the current lineups that the teams are projected to have for next season, and lots of things can still change, but based on their projected lineups, he has the Winnipeg Jets winning the Central Division, amassing 107 points, which is an incredible year for the Winnipeg Jets, especially a Winnipeg Jets team that has been mushy middle as of late. That puts them second in the entire NHL in terms of points, behind only the Edmonton Oilers, who he has projected at 108 points. So he puts the Jets as the second best regular season team in the NHL with 107 points. Meanwhile, you flip over to
so that would be 6 more wins than they had last year.
Yeah, and remember, and it was fighting tooth and nail for the Jets.
Right. Well, they had that terrible 2 months, February and March, right? So
yes, exactly right. So I mean, he has high hopes for the Winnipeg Jets, and then you flip it over to the Athletic and Dom Lucian, and I might be mispronouncing his name, and I apologize if I do. And
hence the reason why, Drew, I only said Dom.
Yeah, well, you're much smarter than I am, and he has the Winnipeg Jets not necessarily as the 27th best team in the league, but he has them ranked 27th in terms of their improvement between this year and next year. So he says that the Jets really didn't improve at all. And if you're 27th in the improvement rankings, that means you're a worse team than you were the year before, if I can extrapolate that out a little bit.
Yeah.
So he says that the subtractions of Pierre-Luc Dubois, the subtractions of Blake Wheeler, are more detrimental to the Winnipeg Jets than the additions of Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, Laurent Brossoit, and Rasmus Kupari. Here's what he said. I'll read it verbatim. Pierre-Luc Dubois was one of the most impactful players to switch sides this offseason, while Blake Wheeler is still a useful top 6 scoring winger, even if he's in decline. Winnipeg's top 6 is going to look very different next season without those two. No question about that one. No argument there. That's where Gabe Vilardi and Alex Iafallo come in. The Jets did admirably well in the Dubois blockbuster to nab those two, and they definitely help fill the void to an extent. Vilardi is an especially intriguing option, and at the very least, the duo should help beef up Winnipeg's defensive game. As admirable as it is, it's still a downgrade. This Jets team is going to be worse next season, and the addition of Rasmus Kupari doesn't really help with that. He was the other piece in the Dubois deal and projects to be Winnipeg's 12th best forward. He says that the goal difference between Vilardi, Iafallo, and Kupari versus Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler is -10 is the goal difference as a result of those moves, and that's why he has the Jets ranked so low. Mm-hmm. So you have two gentlemen who subscribe to analytics as their sort of driving force, as their backbone for a lot of their analysis. Right. And you have two very different opinions about the Winnipeg Jets next season, Mr. Minuk.
Yeah, and they obviously do not use the same models to reach those same predictions, obviously. But look, I mean, I'm not here to defend one or the other, to pick one or the other, because I think that I honestly, first of all, I don't think projections have a lot of value in the first place. I really don't. And again, you show me someone who, and I'll be honest, I don't really pay attention to them, so I can't tell you whether my statement is going to be accurate or not. But how many of these guys who have been doing something like this? Because generally speaking, if you're doing this year, you've probably been doing this, in previous years. So in the previous 10 years, how accurate have these models been? That would be something I'm curious about. And with the Jets, I don't know how you make that prediction simply because I understand you're basing it on the current roster as constructed right now versus last year and that sort of impact. But what I'm suggesting is, without Connor Hellebuck, this team could look very different. Without Mark Scheifele, yeah. And I know that the projections are based on the current lineup. I understand that, Drew. I'm not saying I have a lack of understanding of that. I'm just saying those are factors. So I would never say, well, this model is, and Joe made a good point. He said, look, what's going to happen if you have Nikolai Ehlers who's healthy for the entire season? We don't know if that's going to be the case, but what happens if Nikolai Ehlers is healthy the entire season? And here's another great point from Joe. We love Joe on the show, and Joe has always made a good point. But he said Ehlers will get a lot of Wheeler's penalty power play minutes this season. Dom's model doesn't take that into consideration. Well, what have we been talking about on this show for how many years? Is that Blake Wheeler should have been on the second power play unit, and Nikolai Ehlers should have been on your first power play unit. And you want to talk about analytics? Analytics have told you that. Eye test has told you that. Everybody you that. Now, the coaches are the coaches, and sometimes they don't necessarily want to be told what they need to do. But I'm just saying that I really do think, look, every year teams are going to, have to have a little pie in the sky. You have to have a little hope. You have to hope that Cole Perfetti takes a step forward. But that's kind of what on a team's internal projections, that's what they are projecting, right? Cole Perfetti is going to take a leap like this. Nikolai Ehlers with no Blake Wheeler to block him can be your first line winger now, if you decide to construct the lines that way. But Nikolai Ehlers can be your first. He can have those minutes, not the 14 to 16 minutes that folks are like, and Rick Bowness tried to sell people that, well, that made a lot of sense. And Paul Maurice tried to do that too. Maybe Nikolai Ehlers is having success because he's playing those minutes. And I was like, okay, that could be the case, but
give him more minutes and see if he continues the success.
Exactly. Give him another 5 minutes and see what happens. So look, again, like I said, I have no idea if he's going to stay healthy. And the history would suggest it'll be difficult for him. And Nikolai Ehlers himself addressed that in his, I think, end of season media availability, where he talked about the importance of staying healthy and being available for this team because of how impactful. I mean, he didn't say this, but we are saying this of how impactful he is for the Jets. So you can't just pretend like not having Nikolai Ehlers is not important to this team. And I know that the team was able to have success without Ehlers last year and without Wheeler, if you remember. And that goes back to that idea, Drew, of having a hardworking team and having a team that's going to, do what they need to do. Like when we had guys like Mikey Esimont come up from the Moose or Jansen Harkins, guys work ethic. And that's what this team needs. It's the work ethic. And folks want to talk about Winnipeg being a blue collar town and having a strong work ethic. Well, I mean, I think that's going to be a factor. And I think, Rick Bowness, if he's known for anything, is known for being, a lover of defense. And I think that is what we're going to see. And you might, we always hear the preaching, you can get offense coming from good defense. Well, we're going to, I suspect, see that with a more defensively responsible team. But yeah, I just think it is. I just think like the analytics really, I understand where they're coming from. And look, it's summer content. There's not a ton to talk about in July while you're waiting for, signings to still happen and the last few RFAs to get done. But we're rapidly approaching, Drew, when we take our 5-week hiatus and we basically say, okay, because most of the hockey world says, okay, there's nothing to talk about. And of course, folks, don't worry. There'll still be some conversations, some one-on-ones on our YouTube channel, courtesy of this guy with various, whether they're Jets or Moose. But we'll have some guys that I'll be talking to in August, of course. But we ourselves will be taking time off from this show after next week. And I'm just saying that I just think that there's not a ton of value, ultimately, is what I would put it in terms of these projections. I really don't. Again, unless you can go back and say, hey, Jay Fresh's accuracy in predictions in the last 10 years was 95%, or Dom's model is X percent. And again, I don't know. I haven't done the research necessarily to know how accurate either model is.
What you're saying, that without knowing the success rate, doing projections isn't really necessarily worth it, because I can project that I'm going to win handsomest man of the year for the 48th year running, and if it hasn't happened, then maybe my projection isn't so great at that front. Look, and I've seen a lot of comments in the chat, a lot of people saying that these projections, and we're not. I just want to be clear. I'm not poo-pooing these projections. I think there is some value in them. I understand your perspective completely, Dave, but I do think that it's an interesting exercise that I don't mind reading about in the sort of the dog days of summer. But I think a lot of people are talking about culture. And I'm seeing that a lot, saying that these projections and Dom's projections and Jay Fresh's projections and anybody else who does projections can't factor in culture and a cultural change in the dressing room. And without Blake Wheeler in that dressing room, I think that is going to be a factor. I don't know the extent of that factor, because obviously you can't predict culture and measure the impact of that before it begins to happen. But I do think that his absence, and I'm not using this as an opportunity to jump on him. He's departed Winnipeg, and that was better for everybody. But I do think that that's a factor that will be a significant storyline, certainly to start this year in Winnipeg. Now, you can't, at some point in time, a player being absent from the room, wears out. The impact of that wears off. It's not something that you can hold on to and rely on nonstop for the entirety of an NHL season. At some point, you're just into the day in, day out grind of the season, and that player is no longer a factor. Their absence is no longer a factor. But I do think it's going to be play a role in this Winnipeg Jets team, certainly to start the year. I think it is going to probably help this Winnipeg Jets team as you see officially some of those other players be able to move forward and not necessarily have that a glass ceiling of culture and a glass ceiling of leadership that Wheeler's presence may have been for the last number of years. So I do think that's going to be something certainly very interesting to keep an eye on and watch as the season unfolds. Look, I don't think the Jets are the second best team in the NHL. By the way, Jay Fresh gave a very quick synopsis as to why his projections have the Jets where they are. He says, that his model loves the Jets forward. His model loves the impact that Iafallo and Velarde bring to the Winnipeg Jets. Always, of course, loves Connor Hellebuyck for his impact. And if Connor Hellebuyck isn't the Winnipeg Jets starting goaltender come training camp, well, then this entire conversation is basically a moot one. But I do believe he's going to be the Jets starting goaltender, and I do believe that Mark Scheifele is still going to be a member of the Winnipeg Jets. Does the defense change between now and training camp? I think it's possible. I think time is running out to really see that happen, but I do still think it's possible that the defense changes. But the Jets aren't going to be a 107-point team. But at the same time, they're not going to be a bottom 5 team. This is a team that in a not very talented Central Division, you can't tell me that the Jets are that much different, in my estimation, from really anybody that isn't the Colorado Avalanche. I'm banking on the Avalanche having a comeback season, but they still have question marks about them. With, we know that they've gone through a fair bit of change this offseason. We know that, Gabe Landeskog's not going to play next year. Is Ryan Johansson going to be a capable replacement in Colorado, or is he going to be the disappearing act that we've seen from him in Nashville for so many years? I know a lot of the models, some of the other models are really high on the Nashville Predators. I don't quite see that. I know that they have the great goaltender, of course, in UC Saros. I mean, but you can't tell me that the Jets, from my perspective, are that much different from Dallas or Minnesota or St. Louis or Nashville. And so I think it's going to be a dogfight. Mm-hmm. But I do think that if the Jets score 20 less goals than they did last year, maybe not 20, because goal scoring at times was an issue for the Jets. But if the Jets are giving up and are more defensively responsible because of the additions this offseason, then that's going to be a huge factor for this team. If Connor Hellebuyck's life gets easier and he's still at the level where he has been, where he was last year and where he often has been, then this Jets team is going to win some games. They just are. It's almost by default by having that kind of goaltender. And if you have, a strong commitment to defense, now you have to improve the back end. I still think, I don't know that, Neil Pionk is all of a sudden going to get to somewhere, that he hasn't been in a number of years. It's been a long time since Neil Pionk was a really quality defender in this league. I don't know that Nate Schmidt can get back to when he was at his best, but if the Jets can somehow tap into that, or at least those guys improve to some extent, if the defense improves to some extent and the defensive responsibility on the team improves, because I think it's going to just by default of the players who you've acquired, and you still have Connor Hellebuyck in your net, you're going to win some games is my perspective.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to seize on one of the points you just made about Hellebuyck and helping him out. I mean, first of all, Laurent Brossoit is going to want to play some games.
Yeah.
And Laurent Brossoit got healthy. I know that folks are like, look at his stretch run with Vegas down, at the end of the season when he was finally ready to go. And I had someone tell me from Vegas that, he had surgery last summer that really corrected a problem that he had been suffering since junior. And he wasn't able to really use, I think it was his left side, the way he traditionally, a goaltender would. So it kind of became like almost a dead zone for him, but he actually had that corrected last summer and he was a lot better. He went down to the AHL and, worked on his game and was able to get back to, Laurent Brossoit that we saw here in Winnipeg. And let me tell you, want to talk about a guy who has got a good attitude. There was a podcast that he did with one of the locals in BC that I posted on the website a couple days ago. It's worth giving a listen to, but he along with a lot of guys. And we've talked about it, with the attitude towards Winnipeg and just the desire to be here. And he said, look, I'm not saying that I want to be the number one goaltender, but I'm also not saying it, that I'm going to be willing to push Connor Hellebuyck and I want him to be a better goaltender and with me there. So I think they'll have more faith, to be honest with you, in Laurent Brossoit, especially what you saw him do, right? I mean, again, him right now, it's health, but he was excellent against the Jets, despite the backup comments. He was excellent in the playoffs. He was excellent in the stretch run. I think, what was he? 7-0-3, I think, in one, maybe in his 11 games that he played for Vegas down the stretch. And I think he went 5-2 in the playoffs. So, I mean, you got to factor in that you're going to have a much more capable backup than David Rittich. I didn't think David Rittich was good last year. I know he played okay a little bit, but I didn't think he was capable of being a reliable.
The team had no faith in him.
Well, I mean, I can't say that because I can't tell you what the team, whether they were what they were thinking. You can say that based on their play. Look, I'm just saying that to me, David Rittich wasn't the answer last year, and I think that So again, and I've made this comment a lot. Connor Hellebuyck has faced the most shots since he became the full-time NHL goaltender of the Winnipeg Jets in 2015-16. Nobody in the NHL, and nobody plays as many games as him, but nobody in the NHL has faced as many shots as he has. Now, if you extrapolate, Vasilevsky and Gibson, I think, would be around the same if they played as often as he does. They don't. So since 15-16, nobody has faced as many shots as Connor Hellebuyck. So yes, you need to, especially when you play him that much, you need the defensive game of this hockey team to be a whole hell of a lot better than it's been. Because when a guy is facing that many shots on a nightly basis, I mean, think about how many times we've said, holy, Hellebuyck saved 50 shots, won them the game. They didn't deserve to win, but he won them the game.
Mhm.
Well, you can't have that because it breaks the goaltender down. And he's not 25 anymore. And I'm not saying he's old by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just saying that you don't want to have that much, tread taken off the tires by the end of the season for your number one goaltender. So I think the addition of a more defensively responsible hockey team is going to benefit Connor Hellebuyck. And I think the addition of Laurent Brossoit, a guy he created a relationship with for 3 years, same agency, same trainers in BC. I think that they'll really work well together and create that dynamic. And I think it'll benefit the Winnipeg Jets.
I think I highlighted this comment from 7JP7B. Sorry, that's hard to read. But
isn't that your debit card password, Drew?
Yeah, that is. It's actually Bosco. You should know that my debit card password by now is Bosco. But he said, I think that this year Rick Bowness, spelling notwithstanding, really has a chance to put his stamp on the team. And I do think that this team for this coming season is going to be constructed in a way that Rick Bowness is more comfortable with. Now, I know that a lot of people believe, and the numbers, would say that maybe Rick Bowness doesn't necessarily, when he's coaching, always get the best out of some of his players. And I understand, and I have time for that argument. But putting that to the side for a minute or two, I don't think, when you look at this year's Jets forwards and last year's Jets forwards, I think this year's version is going to be a lot more palatable for Rick Bowness in terms of how he wants his teams to play. I think last year he probably got a fair bit of heartburn watching the Jets play the way they did. In fact, we know that he basically did based on his reaction from the second half of the year till the end of the season. You could see this is not how he wants his teams to play. Sure, at times they might be able to succeed in spite of that, but he doesn't feel as though it is long-term viable. Now, I also have time to hear that that's not necessarily the approach that Rick Bowness should take with some of his players. That he, when you have players who are better suited to a certain style, maybe you have to adjust as a coach to fit those players. And I have a lot of time for that argument. In fact, I think that coaches too often aren't adaptable enough to the talent that is around them. Nonetheless, that's a separate issue for a separate day and time. But, I think this team, as constructed for this coming season, is going to be able to play a style that Rick Bowness is much more comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Now, does that necessarily translate into victories? Does that necessarily translate into success? Well, time will tell on that front. But from the coaching perspective, from the coach being behind the bench, being comfortable with the players he has to deploy, I think this team is a lot more palatable for Rick Bowness than last year's team was.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And look, I think Kenny's water bottle, who we love on this show, even though he said we didn't throw him any love because he's an inanimate object, we do love Kenny's water bottle, KWB. But he does make a good point, right? What the comments about Rick Bowness is that he can play a defensive system, but he stifles the offense under the guise of trying to get his team to play better defense. So again, coaches have to adjust. Coaches have to be able to do both. You can't just play. This isn't the New Jersey Devils and the Minnesota Wild of the 90s where, or late or early 2000s, where offense was an occasional thing. You had Marty Brodeur in net and you played, you had, Scott Stevens and his Kenny Danico, our boy, and a lot of other, Scott Niedermayer.
Do you think Ken Danico refers to us as his boys?
I think so.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I mean, I'm pretty sure as he's got a couple of New Jersey Devils Stanley Cup rings that I gifted him for his birthday last year, actually, coincidentally. It's funny. Now that I think about it, Drew, I do seem to buy Ezzy a lot of birthday gifts. I don't receive a lot of birthday gifts from Ezra, but I do buy him a lot of gifts because I bought him that thing to help with his snoring. That was probably a gift for Naomi or anybody who's ever been in a room with Ez.
Yeah.
But and then last year I bought him some Stanley Cup rings. But you'd think the guy would be.
You bought him a Stanley Cup ring?
Yeah, I was at. I don't know if anybody has ever been to that Mulvey Street Market on Osborne.
Yeah, the sort of
and
flea market sort of shop.
Yeah,
thing?
but honestly, it's like walking back in time. It's amazing actually. And so I was there, and one guy sold like replica rings, and he had two Devils championship rings. So I was like, well, I got to buy those for us. They're hilarious.
Okay,
So then
well,
I gave it to him.
That's 2 more gifts than I think I've ever bought him.
It's probably true, but anyways.
Nonetheless, yeah. Let's. I'll tell you what. I'm not sure what happened to Jeff Hamilton this morning. He's
out.
In.
He'll out. He'll never be on this show
again.
He won't be on the. I can say one thing. He will not be on Illegal Curve for the remainder of the 22-23 season. He has been banned.
Wow, Dave's laying down the law with bannings.
But I don't book guests, so you guys can book whoever you want.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, you have no say on this one. So nonetheless, the banishment really doesn't matter. But nonetheless, maybe we'll see if Jeff responds to a text message in the next couple of minutes or not. Let's go to break. When we come back, why don't you want to pivot and do the Nemesnikov interview?
Yeah,
now?
I think that's that. Yeah. We'll
okay,
do that
so
after
when we come back, the Vlad Nemesnikov interview. So yesterday, Dave and I were able to sit down with Vlad Nemesnikov, talk about his offseason, talk about his decision to re-sign here in Winnipeg. We'll play that for you coming up next. Don't go anywhere. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to help optimize no-look dipping. Ooh, making adjustments so you can stay focused on the game. The playoffs at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on. We're pleased to welcome to the program Winnipeg Jets forward. He's a winger sometimes. He's a center sometimes. He's a renaissance man. Vlad Nemesnikov joins us on the show. Vlad, thanks for joining us. How are things?
Things are good. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. We appreciate you giving us some time to talk to our audience, talk about the offseason, talk about, I guess, really, we'll start with the big decision that you made, which is re-signing in Winnipeg. It's a 2-year contract that happened on July 1st. You know, what went into your decision? I guess we'll start with the low-hanging fruit, and then we'll see where the interview takes us from there. What went into your decision to re-sign in Winnipeg?
Whenever the first time I got to Winnipeg, I loved everything. I mean, amazing team, great coaches. Everyone around the rink treats you, with respect, and great people overall. So it was a pretty easy decision because, July 1st is always stressful, but I was happy to sign that contract with Winnipeg and come back.
So when July 1st came and went, and when free agency opened, it took until a little bit later in the day to make that agreement, or to come to an agreement with the Jets. Were you weighing other options? Were you sort of evaluating what the marketplace had in store? Sort of maybe for our audience, take us through what an unrestricted free agency day might look like.
For me, I was just sitting on the couch, and that part of the business, your agent is on the phone, talking to other teams. But, it kind of happened so quick. Winnipeg called, and, I had to make that decision quick, because free agency, you have to make that decision quick. So overall, it was very, very stressful. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy that it worked out. And, I'm here for 2 more years.
Vlad, one of the things that Elliot Friedman talked about was that you were happy to come back to Winnipeg. And it was one of the things, and a lot of guys are dispelling that notion. Laurent Brossoit was just on a podcast. He talked about how Winnipeg gets a bit of a bad rap, but it's really, it's a great hockey town. Sure, it's cold. We're not going to, pretend like it isn't, but it does have a lot of other benefits that if you're, a hockey player and you want to be valued, this is a market for a lot of players.
Yeah. You're 100% right. For me, that when I saw the whiteout in playoffs, that was when I was like, wow, this is what hockey's all about. This is why you want to play hockey in front of those fans. I mean, that I had goosebumps when that happened. So, yeah, as you said, it's a hockey market, great fans, they treat you well. So nothing to really complain about. Yes, it's cold, but I mean, at the end of the day, who really cares about that kind of stuff? So I'm happy to be back.
You could with a $2 million contract, you can afford a nice heavy jacket to keep you warm in the winter, right?
For sure.
When you came to Winnipeg, right around the trade deadline last year, were you familiar with any of the guys on the team in particular? Did you have any connections, guys that were sort of reaching out to you when the trade went down and talking about what you were sort of coming into, a team that had really some high peaks earlier in the year, but had maybe been in a bit of a valley and then needed that big push to get into the playoff spot?
Yeah, I played with a couple guys. I played with Sam Gagner in Detroit the year before. I played with Neil Pionk on the Rangers. So there were a couple familiar faces, but other than that, you come into the locker room, you meet everyone, and you go out there and play. For me, it was a quick turnaround. I got there, and we had a game that day. So yeah, I came in the locker room, met everyone, and hopped on the ice with them. So that's how the business works sometimes.
You can just call guys by their number until you fully learn their name when you're on the ice, right?
Exactly.
Something along those lines. I mean, that was sort of a bit of a bizarre stretch for you. You went from Tampa to San Jose, albeit quite briefly, to Winnipeg. So, that whirlwind that's going on at that point in time, how are you sort of handling that? How are you sort of navigating those waters when all those moves are happening at once?
Yeah, when I got traded from Tampa to San Jose GM called me right away and said they're going to flip me, but I didn't know where. So, I think it was like a day and a half. I was just sitting there and not knowing what was going to happen. And then Winnipeg wanted to trade, but I had to move my no trade clause to come there. So I was happy to do that. And that's how I ended up in Winnipeg.
So what went into that decision? A lot of guys, we hear it nonstop. Oh, that guy will never come here. He's got a no trade clause. That guy won't come here. He's got a no move clause, things like that. Why were you so willing to do that, contrary to what we allegedly hear from so many others?
Because I thought it was a good fit. Team was doing well. That's all you can ask for is to play in the playoffs, which Winnipeg was in. And I think I knew all the coaches. I played for all the coaches, Bones in Dallas and Tampa. So that familiarity, I wanted to be familiar with the coaches. So, and as I said, the team was doing good, and it's a great group of guys. And, we proved that down the stretch there and made the playoffs.
Vlad, Drew talked about it a little bit off the top, said you're sometimes center, sometimes winger. Do you have a preference? I know sometimes guys don't care, but do you have a preference where you play positionally?
Honestly, no. I came in the league as a centerman, but when I got traded to the Rangers, I kind of had my, troubles and had to kind of move to the wing and learn that game. But overall, it doesn't really matter where I play. Wherever the coaches see me, I'll gladly fill in and do my best at that position.
Vlad Nemesnikov is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Vlad, you talk about, the importance of familiarity with Rick Bowness and some of the coaching staff. Is that sort of maybe an underrated factor in a player's decision making? Knowing what sort of situation they're setting foot in, knowing the coaching staff, knowing what's expected of them. Is that maybe more of a factor than people really put an emphasis on?
I think so. For me personally, it was a big factor. As I said, I played for those guys before, and they know what player I am, and what situations I can help them in, and I think that's the key there. And as I said, I think it's very important for me personally.
And folks talk about developing chemistry. A lot of was made of your chemistry with Nikolai Ehlers. What can you say about playing with a player that dynamic? Sometimes folks can describe him as a little difficult to play with because he isn't expected. He doesn't kind of run that north-south game. But what did you find playing with him?
I think he's extremely, smart. His hockey IQ's, at the very highest level, and he skates, shoots. For me, that's the perfect player to play with. I mean, I can kind of be more responsible, sit back, cover for guys like that, and chemistry sometimes clicks, sometimes it doesn't, and from that first game when they put us together, it kind of just clicked and we took off. So it's been really fun playing with them.
It's the Jets, obviously, Vlad, team in flux this offseason. Some people have departed, some people have come into the lineup. How does that sort of, how do you navigate changes when a team is maybe turning over some of their key players, bringing in new bodies? I mean, there's going to be some new names you got to meet again this when training camp begins in September. Is that exciting to just maybe see a changing of the guard, so to speak, on a team like the Jets and playing a key role in being one of those sort of more, a new face, although you're already been here, of course, but you're now hopefully going to be here for the entirety of the next couple seasons?
Yeah, it's always, fun meeting the new guys on the team. So, I mean, obviously you're familiar with them playing against them, but, from what I heard, they're great guys, and hopefully they can help the team. And, from playing against them, it's been, they're two-way players, all of them, and great defensively and can chip in offensively. So I think that's a great addition to the team, and hopefully we can gel together and do good.
You talk about them being two-way players and defensively responsible, and really the defensive responsibility side of the game here in Winnipeg has been a topic of concern for a number of years. Not strictly the defense, but the forwards and the defense and how everybody works together. When you see the team sort of bringing in players that have a reputation for that defensive responsibility, do you feel as though that's becoming a bigger point of emphasis heading into next year, that it is the 200-foot game, as the cliche goes, and you need to be responsible in your own end before you can look to make offense in the opponent's end?
Yeah, I think if you look around the league, the last couple of years, I think the league's kind of going toward that way, that more defensive hockey that wins you games, and it's not as high scoring anymore. And I think in playoffs, especially, that's the most important part. That's whoever plays the best defense wins pretty much. So, I'm sure these guys will definitely help with that, and it's exciting to see for sure.
Is that something you're paying attention to as a member of this Jets team for the next two seasons? Do you pay attention to what's happening with the team, or is it kind of outside noise, or does the team discuss that as a group? I know there's obviously group chats that go on. How do you kind of approach what's happening with the team when you're not in the season?
Sometimes you see it online on Instagram, like who signs and whatnot, but for the most part in the summer, I try to stay away from all that stuff. Obviously during free agency, you're looking at all the who's signing where, but other than that, I try to, get away from that and just enjoy the summer.
Vlad Nemesnikov, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking to the Winnipeg Jets forward. He signed a 2-year contract extension with the Winnipeg Jets on July the 1st. Vlad, the playoff series against the Vegas Golden Knights obviously didn't go the way you wanted it to go, the franchise wanted it to go, the fan base wanted it to go. Do you ever sit back and say, if we hadn't had the litany of injuries that the team suffered during that playoff series, things could have been different? Or do you feel, given that Vegas ended up winning the cup, that there was, a reasonable margin between the Jets and the Golden Knights in that series?
I don't think there was that big of a difference, to be honest. I mean, the first 4 games that we were right there, it's hockey. And so sometimes things don't go your way and another team just kind of takes off. But other than that last game, I thought we were in it, and we were right there with the Knights. So it sucks to know them going all the way and seeing them win, but you kind of have to move past that now and focus on the new season and what we can do better this year.
Vlad, what is your routine for the postseason once that is? So, for example, when you guys lost against the Vegas series, what do you watch the playoffs much, or do you just try and get away from hockey a little bit and then kind of tune back in, maybe at the conference finals or the Stanley Cup finals?
I did watch the finals a little bit, but other than that, I didn't really watch too much of it. I mean, you're upset, you're angry, and you kind of want to get away from hockey for a little bit. But yeah, the finals I did watch a little bit.
When we were trying to set up this interview, Vlad, I was working with Scott Brown, of course, of the Jets director of communications. And he was saying that, in the mornings you're not available because you're on the ice and you're training and everything else. And the mornings in my world are like 3 or 4 hours long. So maybe take our audience through sort of what an average off-season training session looks like for you. Keep in mind, usually my training sessions last a solid 15 minutes before I'm back on the couch with a bag of chips.
Yeah, you wake up, I'm at the gym at 9, 30-minute stretch, warm up, and then hour and a half workout. So you're there for about 2.5 hours sometimes. And then, I'm lucky my ice sessions are right across the street. So kind of run over there and you're on the ice for another hour and a half. And that's pretty much your day. Then get home, eat, sleep.
Golf a little bit like we were talking about.
Yeah.
Are you on the ice with other players, or are you just one-on-one with a trainer when you're on your on-ice sessions?
Some days it's one-on-one. Some days it's with the guys that work out at my gym. There's Cam Fowler, Max Jones, Jordan Oysterley, Alex DeBrincat. There's a bunch of local guys that are in the league, so it's pretty easy to find ice here.
I hope you guys are making Alex buy a little bit after you sign that big contract.
Yeah.
Vlad, is there an sense of excitement maybe with this group now? You've turned the page, playoffs are well behind you now, and you get obviously your summer training is starting to ramp up across the league, so there's that sense of optimism. Now every team is optimistic. A lot of teams think that they can take that next step, but there have been a lot of changes here in Winnipeg, and it looks like there's going to be some familiarity. Mark Scheifele looks like he's going to be sticking around. Connor Hellebuck the same. So if it is that same group with these additions, is there a sense of optimism with the team as to what kind of damage you guys can do next season?
Yeah, definitely. Now it's, fresh start for everyone. So, yeah, a lot of guys are staying and we got a lot of new guys. So it's going to, maybe take a little bit of time for everyone to gel, but at the end of the day, everyone's excited. And, last year you saw how much success Winnipeg had. So I think with the new additions, we can even do more damage.
How do you build on that success? I think that was sort of part of the, and you weren't here for that part necessarily, but, the team had that success early in the year and they were flying high, and then, it started to dwindle a little bit. How do you maintain sort of that same level, or at least a pretty standard level throughout the course of the year when the games get quote unquote harder and crunch time develops, throughout the course of the 82 game season?
I think you just got to stay focused throughout the whole year. I mean, sometimes you're going to have ups and downs, but that's, it's a hard league to play. So you're obviously going to have those ups and downs, but when you do, you have to kind of, climb out of those downs and climb up. So as I said, there's a lot of new good additions. So hopefully we can quickly gel and take off from the first game.
Vlad, you've played in this league a long time. You know a lot of these players. Was there anybody when you got to Winnipeg that jumped out at you in terms of a skill set, and you were like, wow, when I'm actually practicing with this guy and playing with this guy's skills are kind of off the charts. I wasn't anticipating just how good they were.
I mean, there's a bunch of superstars on the team. I mean, you look at Kyle Connor, his shot, and Mark Scheifele, his skill set and his vision. You look at Morrissey on D, what he can do on that side of the ice, and dance around guys. So yeah, you look at their work ethic and it just surprises you, and that's how it should be. And guys look up to those guys, and that's how it should be.
Vlad, you've spent the majority of your career, I think with the exception of, let me do some quick math, 20, 35, 44 games you've played in the Western Conference, not including the playoffs. So you spent the majority of your career in the East. What was the big difference you noticed, if there was one, when moving from an Eastern, where the majority of your games are played against the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference?
I think the travel was the biggest part. It's longer flights. You spend more time on the plane. So I think that's the biggest difference. But hockey wise, I think it's all teams are pretty much the same way now. Everyone plays, that, defensive style and doesn't give up much. So yeah, I think the travel is the biggest part.
And I guess the travel is inevitable. It's one of those things you can't make the distance between Winnipeg and Los Angeles any shorter. But do you do anything personally to try and sort of mitigate the impact of that travel, or the team and the sleep science and all sort of those new approaches that are at least probably relatively new in the last decade or so?
Yeah, on the plane, I usually try to sleep right when I get on it. Honestly, whenever we take off, I kind of just doze off. But if I can't sleep, I usually read or watch TV shows or movies. Nothing really out of the ordinary.
I know, Vlad, you've been in pro hockey now since you graduated from London Knights, I think about 10 or 11 years already. So are you at the point in your career, like, how has already 10 or 11 years elapsed, and now I'm kind of at the midpoint of my career?
Yeah, time flies. It feels like it started yesterday. I have a little brother that's 19 years old. He's kind of making his way into the pro hockey right now. So I'm telling him, you got to enjoy, every day, because it does fly, and, it gets up to you.
Vlad Namestnikov, forward for the Winnipeg Jets. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. When do you make your way to Winnipeg? What's the rest of the summer sort of look like for you approaching training camp?
I'll probably spend another month here, skating, working out, and then head to Winnipeg. And I haven't really talked to any of the guys when they usually go over there. So I'm sure there's plenty of ice and workouts there too. So I'll figure that out.
Vlad, just one quick addition. There's a lot of Russian-born or guys who are there's Danny Zhilkin, who was born in Russia but grew up in Canada. Do you ever take on a bit of a leadership role with those types of guys? Because they're in the organization. They're playing for the Moose, Nikita Chibrikov, Danny Zhilkin, Dmitry Kuzmin, who's Belarusian, but that sort of idea, these young guys, because, I think too many people, and I know you basically grew up in North America, but for a lot of guys coming over here, people take for granted how difficult that transition is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as an important thing for you to be able to take a role with these guys who, language could be a bit of a barrier for them?
Yeah, for sure. I've went through this with, the Russians on Tampa. Whenever they first came over, they couldn't speak English. They just don't know what life is like here. So I've been helping those guys, and if these guys need help, I'm here, and I'll for sure help with anything they need. So, but it's not easy coming from another country with not knowing the language and all that stuff. So yeah, but I'm here to help. I'm happy to help with that kind of stuff. So
excellent. Vlad Namestnikov, thank you for joining us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Vlad, best of luck with the rest of the summer, whatever fun stuff you have in store, and we'll see you in Winnipeg for training camp in the not so distant future.
Thanks for having me.
Alrighty. Thanks, Vlad.
Thanks, Vlad. Drew's muted. He doesn't realize he's muted.
I
Drew's
see
muted.
that I'm just muted. Yeah, there you go. What I was saying is Vlad Namestnikov from yesterday. Great to sit down with him, talk about a little bit about his off season, talk a little bit about his decision to enter back into a contract with the Winnipeg Jets for the next couple seasons. And as I was saying before, when we were trying to get the interview all queued up and ready to go, I do think that he's not going to be the difference maker for the Winnipeg Jets, but he's one of those professional hockey players, very similar to Nino Niederreiter, a guy who knows, what needs to be done night in and night out, and how the game needs to look night in and night out, in order to succeed. And I think the Jets needed more of those kinds of players, not guys who are necessarily the elite of the elite, but guys who are just reliable professional hockey players, and he is certainly one of those. And I think he'll be a key member of the Winnipeg Jets for the next couple of years, Dave.
Yeah, for sure. And I do, again, like, it's funny. It's the last question I asked him about that idea of mentoring. And he talked about how it's, it can be difficult for guys, and we take it for granted, right? Guys come over here and they play, and look, a guy like Dmitry Kuzmin played in Flint so for a couple of years, so he's been in North America, but it's still an adjustment for these guys. Nikita Chibrikov got to Manitoba in, when did I report that, Drew? Was it May? Whenever the Moose were in their playoff run, he was joining the team, and he's now here, and he'll be doing some staying over here, getting acclimatized. His English, we talked to him at development camp, was a lot better already after just being in North America for a month. But again, it's still a huge adjustment for these guys. So nice to have a guy like Vladimir Mesnikov, who's very approachable, very nice, very easy guy to talk to. We talked to him for a few minutes before obviously getting going. And yeah, he's an easy mannered guy. So he'll be good for the team on the ice, and he'll be good for the team off the ice. And I agree. I think this team is becoming much more some of its parts. I think it's really becoming a Seattle Kraken. We saw the success the Kraken had, not necessarily with that dominant top. And I think the Jets have more talent than Seattle, but it's more just that idea of having, I think you hit on the head. Like, people are forgetting Nino Niederreiter, Vladimir Mesnikov. You've got Alex Iafallo. So you've got depth in this organization, which you didn't have before. And more importantly, I think, and this is going to be on Rick Bowness, you're going to have the ability to roll the four lines. And that is what's going to be incumbent on the coaching staff to have faith in his team and be able to do that. But I think with the depth now, you shall be able to.
Jeff Hamilton has sent me a text message apologizing from the bottom of his heart to our loyal viewing audience for not having joined us at 9:30 this morning. As I am a forgiving, benevolent ruler, Jeff is going to join us after these commercial messages, so he in person can apologize for his malfeasance.
That's actually good.
He actually probably won't apologize for his malfeasance. I'm being a little bit dramatic. But Jeff Hamilton up next on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk with you on this Saturday morning. A reminder, next Saturday, the final Illegal Curve Hockey Show before we take our August hiatus. We'll be here next Saturday. Then we will return the Saturday following Labor Day. So 5 Saturdays without us. If you are in desperate need of us, which I totally understand, we have about 15 years worth of archives that you can feel free to go through to fill the void in your life that will be Dave M. and yours truly not being around with you on a Saturday morning. But we will return shortly thereafter in September, and we will bring you all the latest Winnipeg Jets talk. And of course, as Dave mentioned before, if something arises, if there's something newsworthy, if Dave M gets the boost of energy and wants to conduct a one-on-one interview as only he can, you will see it on our website, illegalcurve.com. You'll also see it here on our YouTube channel. So you never know if and or when we're going to pop up in August, but we will be around. And if we're not, we'll be there in September shortly thereafter.
But Drew, they will know, and that's because they've subscribed to the channel and they've hit the like button on these videos. Please do. And more importantly, you ensure that you have the post notifications on to ensure that you will be advised when new content is coming your way, including our interview with Vladimir Mesnikov, which will be separately posted from the show itself. So we'll have that up tomorrow.
There you go. Speak of somebody who's a little bit delayed.
Wow.
Now, I want to know, you slept through your alarm, like you said, which is nice enough that you set an alarm to try and join us. What were you doing last night that was so rowdy that you that you managed to sleep through an alarm? That's the question people want to know. Were you out gallivanting until the wee hours?
I wish I could share some epic off the screen story for my inexcusable absence from the early slot, gentlemen. I would argue maybe even the primetime slot, as I'm sure fans are drooling for the show well before the start time. But I'm embarrassingly absent of such a story. Not only did I sleep through the alarm, Drew, I was up this morning at 6 a.m. Doing things and decided to but was a little bit tired and decided to take a little bit of a nap and slept through it by I was looking at a 45-minute nap before I was getting up for the show. And then I look at my phone and you see your text message and I get this fear of God in me thinking I'm never going to be allowed to be on our Illegal Curve Hockey Show again if I don't get my arse up right now and in front of a computer. But here I am, done the quick shower, quick hairdo, ready to talk Jets, ready to talk anything besides perhaps maybe my last 120 minutes.
Fair enough. We can accept that. I do appreciate the fact that you woke up so early that you took a nap before 9:30 in the
I'm an
morning.
early riser. I know it's wild. I'm an early riser.
There you go. Well, thank you for joining us nonetheless, and we will overlook the error in your ways, and you're still number one in our hearts and all that jazz. Obviously, Mr. Hamilton brought you on to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, even though we know you are definitely in bomber mode right now. And I have to say, I love your weekly CFL rundown column. I think it's one of the best things that the Free Press publishes on a weekly basis. I do enjoy your unvarnished take about everything going on in the Canadian Football League. But from the Winnipeg Jets, that's where we're talking about this morning. A good week for the team, and they get Velarde under contract. They get Morgan Barron under contract for the next couple of years for each of those players. Dave and I were discussing it earlier, and we both sort of just said very logical moves all around for both player and team. What's your perspective on those two contract signings earlier this week?
Yeah, I like them. I mean, I think it's one of those. It's two players that at different price tags are going to have impactful roles next year, or at the very least, I put these two guys as in players that need to have impactful roles next year to perhaps make up for the absence of a Pierre-Luc Dubois, or more broadly speaking, two players are going to have increased roles, because if this team's going to make the playoffs, just because everybody on the roster is going to have an important role in doing such a job. And so the Velarde stuff, obviously this wasn't going to get to arbitration. There's a lot of talk about, 2 years, and I saw a lot of the chatter online and social media, and predictably it was like, oh, this guy's in a 2-year bridge deal. Like, it's just going to be another 2-year bridge deal, and then he's gone, or 2 1-year deals like we saw with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that this guy's, he's already decided his future. Well, I think there needs to be a massive, pull back from the panic button here. This guy has absolutely no idea what the Winnipeg Jets organization is all about. If anything, all he's heard about is the negative stuff that, I think everybody has heard about. Everybody, I mean, you guys, whether it's on air or off the line, how many times do you have somebody from a different market just want to ask you what's going on in Winnipeg? You know what I mean? So imagine actually having a invested interest in the city and in the organization. And so, while the 2 years might seem, and I'm not saying very possibly, but possibly could be this could be the end story for Velarde in a few years. Maybe he does do this depending on what happens in the next 2 years. But to me, this was to get him in the door, to, get that bridge deal done, show him what you're all about, get him in the organization, so you could be talking a long-term extension, in a year from now. And so the other part too is Velarde, if he's going to sign a long-term deal, he wants to have where his value is as high as possible. This guy's coming off a career high 41 points last year, and I believe 63 games. I mean, there's not a lot. While he did take steps in his career last year, he's going to take more steps, so his value is going to be higher, assuming he can continue this upwards trajectory. So it's a win-win for both the team and Velarde, in my opinion, in that he's under contract. He's on the team for at least obviously 2 more years at a reasonable number. But next year, depending on how he does, and assuming he does well and continues to climb and gets opportunity with Winnipeg, well, you're talking a bigger contract and possibly a longer term contract. So I think that one, is a tidy piece of business. The Morgan Barron stuff, is it just me, or did it seem a little low?
I don't disagree.
And it's not. It's you look at the numbers, and I don't think he's warranting maybe a $2.5 million deal, and so maybe we're talking $500,000 here on a tab. But there's a lot of people, I think, quietly interested in Morgan Barron around the league, and to me, obviously doesn't have that leverage just yet in his contract situation or his status right now, but. Whenever I hear about trades or rumors, Logan Stanley's always linked in all of them. Like, it's like, he's almost like a throwaway piece in some of them. But Morgan Barron has garnered interest elsewhere just for his unique skill set. And he's one of those guys. He's one of those guys, I'd argue, that the Winnipeg Jets are looking for in return right now in trades. They're not going to get, that high-end player from, a Connor Hellebuck or that, an equal player, we'll say. And same story for Mark Scheifele. It's just hard to find equalness in that trade if you're going to do a player per player, right? However, they're trying to get like a variation of Morgan Barron. It's not exactly the identical game of his, but the situation that he's in the NHL where he's done enough to suggest that he's going to do more and he's going to be an impactful guy, but he's done almost not enough to warrant that, okay, we need this guy kind of thing. And so I think it's kind of one of those guessing games that you're hoping that you're budgeting on him improving. And Morgan Barron, while he certainly endeared himself over the playoffs with the stitches, and it seems to be it will probably be attached to him forever. Like a lot of the stories I read about the signing just went into detail about how he got cut. You know what I mean? Like it was like that was his, after you got past some of the stat lines, it's like, oh yeah, this guy also came back from, getting sliced up in the playoffs. So, I do think that it's a great pick. It's a great contract for the Jets. I think it's a prove-it contract for Morgan Barron. And I think, from his side, he's probably looking at like, look, I get a lot of opportunity with the Winnipeg Jets. He looks like he's solidified a spot on that third line. We'll see. And if he can continue to grow, then he can see, like the Brandon Tanevs, the other people have kind of walked through, the Andrew Kopps who have walked through that, that stepping stone, if you will, to a bigger contract. But in the meantime, with where the Jets are salary cap wise, I think, the Morgan Barron, certainly that contract is works for them and works for what they're trying to achieve at least through the next couple of years here.
Jeff, there's Andrew Ladd, there was Blake Wheeler. And the question is, who will be the next captain of the Winnipeg Jets? I know some people say it's not important. What are your thoughts? Is it important? Because look, at the end of the season last year in the media availabilities, not one of these guys wanted to say it wasn't Blake Wheeler, even though he didn't wear the C. Well, he's no longer on the team. There is an opportunity for someone to wear a C. So do you think, it's super important? Do you think it's something that gets done before the season begins? And again, I'm still on the Josh Morrissey train. I mean, he's signed the longest. Adam Lowry has less term than Josh Morrissey. And I think Josh Morrissey is, that guy he's the most measured guy on the team, probably the most well-spoken. Lowry is very close along those lines, but in your mind, is it something that's important? Do you think it's something that gets done before training camp or at training camp? And if you had to pick, who do you think is going to be wearing it ultimately?
I do think I do think as a general rule, it's not necessarily important. I do think it's important for the Winnipeg Jets to just have an established leadership structure. I mean, would I be surprised if they go into camp next year without a letter? Like, would they do something like they did with Blake Wheeler? Would they have this announcement and announce the captain of the team ahead of training camp, or maybe get some buzz going in the summer, or what, over here? That would have to be over the next 6 weeks or so. Like summer's coming to a close. Unfortunately,
don't mention that part.
Yeah, I know it's brutal. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they started training camp without one and then ended training camp. Like, I don't think, I could be very much wrong here. I don't think they're going to do that formal announcement thing. I think it's going to get back into, the swing of things and then maybe announce one out of camp. I'm sure Rick Bowness has an idea over his last full season with the team, who he believes should be the captain of this team. How much that, if any, might have changed in the exit interviews, because I'll be honest with you guys, this on outside of actually mentioning Blake Wheeler as the undisputed captain, if you will, or still the captain, regardless of what happened, the previous offseason. I thought it was interesting to see not one of those guys, in Adam Lowry and Josh Morrissey, stick up for their coach. Even just show some level of accountability. You didn't have to agree with with how he delivered his message, but the fact that neither of those guys, who I think are the two front runners for the captain, acknowledge that while they could have, he could have handled it or said it or delivered it better, the message was still true. You know what I mean? There was still that lack of accountability that I think, you need from or accountability, level of accountability you need from a captain that wasn't there during those interviews. And so, I think it is between those two. I still think it's Adam Lowry. I was advocating him last year. I just think he's universally liked in the locker room. That's not to say Josh Morrissey isn't. Of course, Josh Morrissey is universally liked. I think Adam Lowry has the ability to handle the responsibilities of a captain outside of the locker room stuff probably better than Josh Morrissey. And I say that because when things start, when things started to go badly, around the All-Star game, I mean, everyone, kind of considered Josh Morrissey as the captain on the Winnipeg Jets. And I say that from a media standpoint because if things didn't go down the way the Jets wanted them to go down in a game, Josh Morrissey would be called on, and you could see that stuff wore on him. It wore on him over time. And he needed a break. He got a week break from the media before he went to the All-Star game to get a whole bunch more media. And so I'm not saying that being in front of the media and all those things is the de facto number one determination of who should be a captain, but I do think that plays a role in it. And I do think that Adam Lowry has a better ability to handle that. And the burden, and I'll emphasize burden, as that part of the job, because we saw it with Blake Wheeler and that became an issue. You know what I mean? That became an issue over time, and it certainly was a burden. I wouldn't want to add a burden to Morrissey's game in a way that I think would affect his game than I would with Adam Lowry, who I believe can handle both of those roles.
I agree wholeheartedly with that last sort of comment you were making there, Jeff. Adam Lowry's not counted on to put the puck in the net. Any offense you're getting from Adam Lowry is a bonus. So when the offense for him dries up, as it does in at different times in every year that he more or less plays, it won't be as the fact that he's also the captain won't be as detrimental as all of a sudden if Josh Morrissey's offense dries up or if his play takes a significant step back. It's almost like the Jets rely more on Morrissey on the ice night in and night out than they do Lowry night in and night out. And that's not diminishing the impact that Lowry has on this team. But, if Adam Lowry goes 5 games without a goal, nobody's really going to bat an eye about it. If Josh Morrissey goes, while holding on to the captaincy responsibilities is what I'm saying. If Morrissey all of a sudden goes into an offensive slump or a defensive slump while holding on to the offense, the captaincy responsibilities, all of a sudden is the captaincy too big for Josh Morrissey? That can be sort of a narrative that might develop. Whereas I don't think that same narrative would develop with Lowry, to your point.
Yeah, and I think that just speaks to the burden part, right? Where it could be going swimmingly like it was the first half of the season with the Winnipeg Jets, because everybody wanted to talk, because everybody talked about the bonus effect and how the leadership group was fixed and how great the team was.
The pledge,
and all these things.
Where's the pledge now?
It's still there. For the record, the pledge is still in the locker room. I can tell. Yeah. I can attest at development camp we saw the pledge still.
I don't have any physical proof, but there was lineups to talk to the media. I swear to God, people just wanted to see what we were up to. There was even a question the other way.
They were asking us to join their fantasy football leagues.
Yeah, exactly. They were looking for our advice. Yeah. They were reading. No, but yeah, that's part of it, right? Because when things don't go well here, we've seen the difficulties that exist within the locker room, right? Winning cures everything. Well, losing for this team certainly hurts a lot. And so I do think there's a burden there. I do think of the relationships inside the locker room. Again, I'm not trying to stress or suggest that Josh Morrissey doesn't have that allegiance, but Adam Lowry, like in scanning players during this process, it was always things I would ask players kind of after an individual interview, just, I'm not going to quote you, just looking like who you think should be the captain of this team next year as we were going, getting later in the year. And as kind of the question became a little bit more prominent as the year went on. And I'm telling you right now, I got everything from it would be an absolute shock if Adam Lowry didn't get captain to this guy needs to get it. It's just the dynamic in the locker room. He's universally respected. And there's another aspect of it. And again, it's not an end all be all, but it's these little pieces that add up to the argument for Adam Lowry is that who's the guy who sticks up for the teammates on the ice every night. Mm-hmm. So, you look at the impact that Josh Morrissey have. No one's going to make an argument that Adam Lowry has a bigger impact to the success when it comes to wins and losses for the Winnipeg Jets than Josh Morrissey. You could make the argument Josh Morrissey, maybe Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele when he's taking over a game. Same thing for Pierre Dubois. You make those arguments for those players. Adam Lowry doesn't have that pedigree. But what he does have is that when shit hits the fan at the end of a game or in the middle of a game, or if someone needs to be, stood up for. There you have number 17 coming to their rescue, fighting, getting that bench going, playing a little extra taller, some of the smaller guys, because they know Adam Lowry has their back. And so that's where I kind of lean on 17 getting it over 44. But at the same time, here we are, could be a really good opportunity for him to I think it's also, if it's Josh Morrissey, I don't think it's a big panic either. So I think it's a win-win, good choice either way.
Jeff Hamilton, our guest Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on. Jeff, we are spending a lot of today talking about sort of the look of this team for next year and the defensively responsible players, particularly the forward group that has been brought in this offseason. Do you think that this team, as projected for next season, is more of a Rick Bowness team? The personnel are more suited for a Rick Bowness style than the players they had last year necessarily. It seems like defensive responsibility among the forwards has been a priority for the Jets this offseason.
Yeah, I think so. I Rick Bowness certainly would have a lot of say, and he wouldn't have final say, but he'd have certainly enough say in the players that they brought in, whether that was through trade or whatever, or keeping players or those kind of decisions. I think if you looked at last year, you could probably make an argument that, the Jets played better when their stars were out, and that, they played more defensively responsible, or they played under at least the mentality that they didn't have, those goal scorers in play, guys that were going to generate heavy offense, so they had to adjust to a different style, right? And so I do think this looks like a lineup when you take a look at it. It does reflect to me a more Rick Bowness lineup, but I also think that it's players that are not going to get in each other's way. I think there was a little bit of there's a lot of prove it players on that roster that I think are going to play out of their shoes, play committed to the game, that are a little less instinctual when it comes to detouring from the game if things get rough. I mean, that's a little too much psychoanalysis of this roster. We haven't even seen them play one game. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, that they could fold like a cheap tent after a tough start. Who knows? But just the makeup that it looks like right now, it looks less star-studded, if that makes sense. And so I think if you're going to share if you're going to improve the locker room culture, to continue to improve the locker room culture, do all those things, I think you want to have a little bit of an environment where it seems a bit freer, where guys are going to be leaned on to have a little bit more say, even more than last year. That is taking Blake Wheeler out of the locker room. That is Pierre-Luc Dubois out of the locker room. There's more opportunity at play here. There's guys who I think have been hovering in that third kind of line role that are want to prove that they can go up and down the lineup. I think we're going to see maybe on paper not as good a lineup as we saw last year, but I think what's going to be made up is more of a commitment to the defensive structure, but also more of an identity of a team where this team needs to work hard, right? Like, it's not going to be easy offense next year, and I think that's kind of where I see the makeup of this team. That's where I see the difference of it. And I mean, when you're talking about defensive hockey and maybe making up for losing some goal scorers, that is kind of the Rick Bowness model, right? Like when Rick Bowness first got hired last offseason, the talk was, oh my God, Kyle Connor is going to be traded. You know what I mean? They don't need guys like that. You know what I mean? They don't. Those guys aren't part of the Rick Bowness model. They don't need guys who can score 50 goals. They need guys who can defend from the blue line backwards. And so we'll see. I do think this is a good team. I do think they're a playoff team the way they're constructed right now. I mean that, and when I say that, I'm saying with the inclusion of Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck, who seem like, at least for now, they're Winnipeg Jets. I do like the look of them. I think we've been fooled on paper before, so I think there will be challenges, obviously, like every team will have. But I do think this is an interesting looking team, and one that I think can compete in the Central Division. And when you look at some of the mock drafts of some people, you got everything from the Jets at first to the Jets missing the playoffs. So, I think there's a lot of people who are confused at what the Winnipeg Jets are right now, and within good reason, because there's a lot of new pieces. There's a lot of moving pieces. But the good news is I think the attitude of the team under Rick Bowness could change with the roster that we're looking at now. And we saw last year out in 5 games. We saw the year before that didn't even make the playoffs in 10 points. So maybe this would be the start of a new model where you start bringing in guys that, I don't want to say care more than the guys that were in before, but have something to prove, and therefore, focus on team game and all those things become top of mind.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is it just became stale, right? And you had that same group for a long time, and you've kept trying to recreate the magic of 17-18. Well, that was a long time ago. It's not 17-18 anymore. And, Jeff, I'm not going to ask for your for a lock pick here, but if you were putting on your prognostication hat and you were guessing, and you kind of alluded to it in your last answer a little bit, but the expectation with Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, it's funny because when we were doing the show, Drew and I were on board. We thought of the moves that were going to be made. We thought Dubois was gone. We thought Wheeler was most likely gone. And Drew and I were both more on board with the idea that it would be Scheifele and Hellebuyck starting the season with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, that was months ago. A lot of folks said otherwise, and it seems like months later, and with only 5 weeks to go till training camp, or 6 weeks or whatever it is, it seems likely that those two are going to remain on the Winnipeg Jets roster. So I guess the first question would be, do you see that happening? Do you see them sticking around? Do you see Kevin Cheveldayoff going completely wild, getting out of the cottage and coming to making a big trade? Or do you really see those guys sticking around? And then what happens with this team if you have those two guys and you are in a playoff spot and you can't sign them to extensions? What the hell are you doing at the deadline?
Wow, a lot of questions.
So
I think my opinion has changed over time. I mean, certainly over the last few months, I think there's reason to believe that Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele will both be on the roster for this season, at least to start this season. I also think there's potential for both of them to be gone. Really, what I think it comes down to, and I've said this on other shows and over the last few weeks, and I certainly stick to it, is that, Kevin Cheveldayoff isn't going to trade these two players for pennies on the dollar. He's not going to take, because they have expiring contracts after this year. He's not just going to take whatever the best deal is before a reasonable time in this summer, right? Because as things get closer to training camp, the idea of a trade is less likely. Like, teams don't usually dip into deep August to trade players, right before training camp. It's a bit of too much of a move, right? And you've already talked, chances are, unless there's been something that happened so crazy within the organization, and usually negative, that it demands or warrants a trade, you just don't do that. You already have offers. You already have, what you give teams deadlines for what their last offer can be, right? And then you'll tell them you're going to be done negotiating. You kind of have to be hard in the sand at certain points. So I do think that those players, obviously, in Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, have been talked about, have certainly garnered interest around the league. Probably at some point in time, the Jets thought they were close to making a deal with one or both of them. And then all of a sudden, a trade that happens and a new centerman's gone, and all of a sudden they stop picking up the phone, right? Or the Jets are just, like, at my original point, aren't going to be taking, understanding the teams know that maybe these players aren't happy, that they're probably not going to sign long-term deals. Maybe we can wait them out, right? Stuff like that. Like that's the issue on the Jets side. And the other side is, I think with the Hellebuyck in particular, is you will get more out of that trade if you can convince him to sign a long-term deal with the team. I think there's just more teams out there that are hesitant in signing that long-term deal. Like, who wants Connor Hellebuyck for 8 years, right? I mean, I don't know how many teams would want that. And that's really the benefit, I guess, of the Jets having that. I mean, the Jets could sign him to a smaller deal, but at least have it done. And that could add to a trade. But that's really the reason why you do sign and trades, is to get that maximum 8 year. But I think it's an interesting one. I do think there's more potential for Hellebuyck to get traded. I look at teams around the league, and I look at New Jersey, as a team that's obviously shown some interest, and Hellebuyck reportedly has been interested in that side. I still see that as a possibility. I keep thinking that if it's not going to be a sign and trade, because that's what I think, if it's New Jersey, it's a sign and trade. I keep looking at Toronto. I keep looking over at Toronto, and I keep looking at their issues with goaltenders. And while, there's buzz out there, and it certainly has some truth to it that Connor Hellebuyck's looking for a long-term deal south of the border, he's still under contract for another season.
Mm-hmm.
And so would that be appealing to Toronto, who is trying to continue to build something there, has obviously had issues in net, has a guy in Nylander who I think if it was a trade, I would probably say Nylander doesn't come to Winnipeg. There'd have to be a third team involved in this trade, that Winnipeg would probably get compensated for picks of some kind, maybe some players. I don't know. It's just the way the people I've been talking to, they said Toronto's interesting, but would probably involve a third team. Anyways, I'm just regurgitating that.
Look at you stirring the pot a little bit.
It would be a very interesting situation there. But again, I think what depending on what you can get either for Hellebuyck or Mark Scheifele, I think there is a feeling inside of the True North organization that we need to get this back on track. We need to get some of these good feelings back in the building. We need to get bodies back in the building. We need to build a team that is competitive, that's going to fight for a Stanley Cup, because we are bleeding in the bottom line when it comes to season ticket holders, when it comes to filling our small building night in and night out. How much would a playoff run do for the city, do for the bottom line, all these things. And I think you have Mark Chipman on one side who's trying to weigh the importance of having a winner here and rejuvenating the city after some tough years among the fan base, and especially with the potential of max exodus this offseason, to kind of weigh the importance or the value of that. And along with maybe the hockey sense of, hey, well, we need to, we need to be smart about this. We don't want to have two probably arguably the most impactful players on our, in our organization leave for nothing. That's not going to go over well. And so to answer the last part of your question, Dave, if they do bring both of them back, well, now you're at a situation where if you get to the trade deadline, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, obviously, if you get to the trade deadline, you might be getting more during that time for a Hellebuyck than you would right now. You know what I mean? There might be teams when they get to the trade deadline, get desperate, want to throw out their futures for their present, all these things get crazy. There's bidding wars because all of a sudden this guy is going to be the, think about adding a Connor Hellebuyck at the trade deadline. If you have goaltender issues, it's just like, it doesn't get much better than that. It's like adding UC Saros or, whatever. It's just, a guy that can take over and play that huge role for your team, obviously. But obviously, if you're in a playoff position, and I think it would have to be, and this is just plain hypothetical, the Jets would have to be dominating. Like, I mean, first or second in the Central, preferably first, obviously, like showing clear signs of moving up to keep both of those guys at the deadline. If you get into a situation like we got into last trade deadline where the wheels had started to fall off, they hadn't completely fallen off, but they were starting to fall off, that's when you need to make a smart decision, get rid of, trade those guys, and then hopefully be like a Nashville, and hopefully you can hold on, but achieve that last playoff spot. Because right now, unless you can see yourself as a top echelon team, and I think that would be what you're looking at, obviously, through the first good chunk of the season to the deadline. That's what the Jets would obviously be looking at and evaluating. But it would be a horror story, I think, if you got there and there was, they were really, really good and you couldn't trade them, or they were really, really bad and you didn't trade them, and you didn't get the value that many fans were hoping for and would have argued for and believed in given the full year. That would be, wouldn't be as strong maybe at that point than in the summer.
Last question for you. Jeff Hamilton, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're into overtime here Saturday morning. How concerned should I be about the Bombers' offensive line?
Did you watch last game?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think you should be concerned. I mean, look.
You don't think I should be concerned, really? I mean, that first half they were getting pushed around pretty good. It was only the second half that they were able to establish the run.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's one of those things that I think fans just need to come to grips with the fact that the Bombers are going to have closer games than they, and they're going to, like last year they won. If you look at the last 2 years, I really do think that 2021 just completely shifted the fan base's mindset, right?
Sure.
All they remember is at the end of 2019, the Bombers were dominant in this improbable, unbelievable, run to the Grey Cup where they played 3 road games to snap that curse. Then they were super hungry for 2020 to come back and defend that cup. They couldn't do that because of COVID. And then 2021 hit, and the Bombers made a joke of the CFL. They won by like an average margin of like 18 points a game.
Yeah,
and I think that set the expectation, because then you look in last season, the Bombers won a lot of close games. And so this year, I wouldn't say they've been close. There's certainly been 2 games that have been just embarrassing losses. Fans aren't used to it, but the O-line, they're getting older. Sure. I still think they're a dominant group. I still, you ask Zach Collaros and what else is he going to say? But, he wouldn't want to play behind anybody other than that group. And, I think the good news is they have, guys like Tui Eli and Liam Dobson that they can bring in, right? And that they can, so I think my at least according to my email inbox, the concern is that there's no one in behind these guys, that they're too old. I think the Bombers are doing a fine job. I think, you have to wonder with the outside tackles, like how much longer can Stanley Bryan, Jamarcus Hardrick do this at this level for this long as they enter their, mid-30s. So there are question marks, but I would just give this group a little bit more leash. They got a bye week now. It's a huge game coming back in week 9 with BC at home. I think that's going to be a massive test. The Bombers are going to be pissed off about what happened in week 3, obviously losing 30-6 at home. So it's certainly a revenge game. So I think I think the future is bright with this team this year. It just might not be as convincing as years befure.
The real question I want to ask, and then we're going to let you go. You already took your morning nap. Mm-hmm. Will there be an afternoon nap? Are you a double nap guy? Can you pull off the double header of naps in the same day?
I probably won't nap later today, but I probably will meditate later today just to calm my busy mind over, I got a lot of projects on the go. So I probably won't be out because I can't really nap despite the severe evidence against me this morning. But yeah, there probably won't be more naps, but you know what? I'll probably just split the difference and go to bed early tonight.
Jeff Hamilton, the Hammer himself, Winnipeg Free Press. You can read all his work in the broadsheet and online at winnipegfreepress.com. Jeff, thanks for this, buddy. We'll do it again real soon. Have a great rest of the summer if we don't speak until then.
My pleasure, guys. Talk soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff Hamilton joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
OT!
Into overtime, Dave M. That's where we're at this point in time.
Well, Drew, before you sign off, though,
yeah,
we have to wish Nate Thompson all the best in his retirement.
Yes.
14 seasons. Nate Thompson played 44. If you're a numerologist, he liked wearing the number 44. He finished with 844 regular season games, 44 of which were played wearing a Winnipeg Jets jersey. So Nate Thompson, all the best in retirement. And I was going to read the Laurent Brossoit quote. Thought it was, again, if you want to listen to the interview, I've got it on the website, but it's a good one from the Jets backup netminder talking about Winnipeg. To be honest, everyone gives it a bad rep, but we've had a lot of good years in Winnipeg, and I resurrected my career. I feel appreciated there, and I've played some good hockey there. And so I'm very excited to get back. So give it a listen. I've got it on illegalcurve.com. It's about 11-minute interview with Laurent Brossoit.
And if you missed any of today's interview with Vlad Namestnikov, it'll be available in the immediate replay on the YouTube channel. It'll be a standalone interview tomorrow on both illegalcurve.com and on the YouTube channel. And of course, the podcast edition of the show will be available shortly after we wrap up this morning. Reminder, next Saturday, Dave M and I are back for AMMA. It's not mixed martial arts. It's Ask Mindell and Manuk anything. That's how we wrap up the season here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So next Saturday morning, 9 a.m., your usual allotment of Jets talk plus contributions from you good folks. AMMA. Ask Mindell, Ask Manuk, anything. That coming up next Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thanks to Jeff Hamilton for joining us. Big thanks to Vlad Namestnikov joining us yesterday that we aired today. Big thanks to all of you for joining us on this Saturday morning edition of the program. And a big thanks to our sponsors who make the post-game show, the Saturday show, the website, a possibility, our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Jordan Rock, 2 shows tonight. He's been here all week. Yeah, the last name sounds familiar. It's a big last name in comedy. He's Chris's brother. Jordan Rock tonight at Rumors, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rollies Transfer, host Drew Mindell. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you again next Saturday. Be safe this weekend. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.